We're back. Long hiatus, but we're back on episode 17. We're like a groundhog, man. We come up every once in a while, give our takes, and go back into hibernation, watch sports, and do real life stuff. But how you been, dude?
Pretty good, man. Just busy with real life stuff, and then once the Suns got eliminated, it kind of
It
it
killed the
was just beating
vibe.
a little bit, a little bit. I mean, I loved watching the Heat and the Nuggets win in the Eastern and the Western Conference Finals, respectively. And then when the finals came around, it feel like it was just over really quickly. I got to be
It,
honest.
yeah.
Especially compared to the seven-game series between the Heat and the Celtics, which is absolutely epic. But
That was a really
it,
crazy series, yeah.
It just felt unfortunately like the Heat were a bit overmatched in those finals, and I think it was just a bad opponent for them due to Denver's size and such, and it ended up playing out that way. Um,
Yeah.
so congratulations, Denver. Obviously, I think well deserved. I think they were maybe not record wise, because I think some of the Eastern teams had a better record, but in my opinion, they were the best team all year. And obviously, Jokic finally gets a ring, shuts a lot of people up, which I know we are both very happy about. So,
Hey, remember, they were my pick before the year, boy. I got it. I got it. That's why I like that we have the old pods look back and definitely later on we're gonna do like the same things we're doing for those older ones so we can look back. And we will get a little bit more into the Nuggets because I definitely did want to talk about them. We were gonna start the show with that, but obviously we have to talk about Bradley Beal because that literally just happened a little bit before we started recording. We were gonna talk about Suns. I figured we just front load all that into this. Um, I guess I'll just say real quick, like my first reaction was no, 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 because I just don't exactly think he's what y'all needed. But then at the same time, I saw it was Chris Paul and Shamit and some seconds, and I'm feeling a little better about it, but I still don't know how to feel. Tell me how to feel. What are you feeling?
I'm feeling kind of like the 8 out of 10 right now.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where you look at like the Kevin Durant trade, which is, in my opinion, still a 10 out of 10. I get obviously the loss of McHale and the loss of Cam, et cetera, and how that kind of hurt, but it's a no brainer to trade for something like that. The difference in this is kind of the fit when you have, Devin Booker, who's naturally a two guard, and Bradley Beal, who is definitely a two guard. It's just kind of about the fit of that. But it's one of those things when you have the possibility to trade for somebody who is an all-star caliber player, who was an all NBA player 2 years ago, who was the leading scorer in the league 2 years ago. It's tough to turn that down, especially when you're trading a 37 or is he 38 now year old point guard and Landry Shamet. I mean, and a bunch of second round picks, which I mean are pretty much kind of just throw-ins. When you have the opportunity to make that kind of trade, the value is just immense. I mean, it's
Yeah, because at
obviously
first
the
I thought y'all would have had to give up Aiton, and Aiton did kind of fall off towards the end, but me and you still kind of got a little Aiton hope. But I thought, oh, they're gonna have to trade Aiton to make the contracts work. But man, just giving up Chris Paul and Shamit, I mean, I feel like I don't know. I feel like I might be with you with the 8 out of 10. I don't see. Well, the contract is scary. Y'all's depth is scary. But like Chris Paul and Shamit doesn't. Chris Paul always gets hurt. Like you said, he's old. It doesn't change too much. But like, the first thing I thought about was like, how would the Nuggets series have looked if y'all did have Beal? Like, how would he have helped? And like, I don't. Y'all, I mean, y'all's biggest issue was obviously Jokic and then lack of depth, which the depth will be a big problem coming up this season for sure. But I don't know if y'all had Brad Beal, y'all might have been able to do it, because Kate, and that was the biggest thing. KD and Booker, like they were just getting overworked too much, and obviously they didn't just shit the bed because they sucked. It's because they were going on tremendous amounts of minutes playing insane basketball. So yeah,
yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's a few things based on what you just discussed. Injuries with Chris Paul is the one thing. The one question that some people have actually asked me already is like, "Hey, Beal's been injured a lot recently," and that is true.
yeah,
I will say I don't feel like it's as much wear and tear. Like so, In 2022, he had season-ending surgery on his left wrist. Obviously, that is significant, but it's not as much wear and tear where like hamstring or legs or stuff like that. I don't really recall the injuries this year, but also I think it's one of those things that's very situational too. Playing on a team like the Wizards, who are crap, to be quite honest. I'm sorry, any Wizards fans, but I think you already know that. He can't be that motivated about playing there, as we all know. We all said the contract was a bad idea,
Yeah.
and sure enough, they forced their hand the next offseason after signing that extension or contract, where they had to trade him for, to be quite honest, peanuts. And actually, there's a report that I just saw now. Chris Paul is definitely not going to be playing for the Wizards. Apparently, the Wizards are likely to reroute Chris Paul in a trade, so it'll become a three-way trade. And apparently, the front runner for that third team right now is the Clippers, which is very interesting. Seeing Chris Paul with the Clippers would certainly be interesting. My assumption would be he'd get bought out and he would go sign with the Lakers or something. But that's obviously discussion for a later podcast. So that's the first thing. The second thing, your thought about, what he would do in the series against the Nuggets. I'm really not concerned about the fit once we get to the playoffs. So my main concern with the fit is obviously Booker and Beal are both naturally two guards. My concern really isn't once we get to the playoffs, because in the playoffs, Booker and KD might as well just be the primary ball handlers. I mean, that's kind of the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
And even when Chris Paul, before he got hurt, in that Clippers series, for example, Booker and KD honestly did most of the ball handling. And the main thing is that Chris Paul got a ton of open looks in the Clippers series and in the Nuggets series before he got hurt. He wasn't knocking them down in a bad clip. I don't have the percentages in front of me, but a stat here on Bradley Beal, on catch and shoot threes the last 5 years, he's shooting 37%. On wide open threes the last 5 years, he's shooting 41%. That is clearly a big upgrade, especially when you consider, I think the main thing
Who, from
offensively. Well, yeah, I don't want to shit on Shamit too much. It is what it is. I'm glad he's gone. Chris Paul is obviously the main loss here. But that's definitely an upgrade from Chris Paul. Chris Paul is also, unfortunately, to be rude, he's kind of just become a bit of a traffic cone on defense. I mean, it's just the fact he's a small point guard and now he's 38. Bradley Beal is obviously not great defensively, but he is also bigger. He's also 29 years old, which is that's a 9-year
He's younger than you would
Chris
think.
Paul. No, that's the thing. Devin Booker is 27 and Bradley Beal is 29, which is crazy to even think about. Yeah. Obviously, Bradley Beal spent some years in college and such with Florida. And, geez, Devin Booker being 27 is kind of scary too. But Beal will be turning 30 soon enough. But he's obviously more athletic than Chris Paul. He's bigger. He's stronger. That should help him not just get abused by bigger wings necessarily. Obviously, I think Booker will take the more difficult matchup of the two guards or whatever. And then it's kind of a question of who's at the three, and that'll be the main point of attack defender, aka Mikal Bridges was for us, or Josh Okogie after the Bridges trade last year. So it's one of those things. I just think the value is too good. If it was Ayton, I'd be a little bit more concerned, not necessarily because I'm sold on the idea of Ayton on this team, but just because Ayton is a more valuable asset. Chris Paul, for all intents and purposes, we were either going to lose him this offseason for nothing or sign him back next year, have a 38-year-old point guard, basically run it back, which not saying that, if Chris Paul was healthy, we win it all this year, but, if he was healthy, I still don't think we'd get past the Nuggets, to be honest. So we would just be running it back when we clearly weren't good enough last year. So I just think it's a no-brainer in a way, I don't want to say it extends the window, because obviously Bradley Beal is 30 and KD is 34 and such, but we basically just gained 9 years of age and we have a better player, arguably. So, I mean, I look at it as a positive that way.
Well, I really wanted to touch on something you brought up. My first response to your first response of what I said is which is this is obviously going to be a talking point about how he was on the Wizards. And when he got that contract, I think I texted you at the time and said worst contract in the league. and it's not a good contract. Like that's why I hate
No.
on Beal because like he is really good, but anyway. But basically, what I'm trying to say is like just look at like what happened with Rui going to the Lakers. You know, if that could happen to Rui going from the Wizards to Lakers, I feel like it's at least got to happen a bit for Beal, where he just like is way better because of the talent and like coaching around him. Like I really like that aspect of it. And then the fact that I mean we talk about the contract and it's not good, but like y'all are in the perfect situation to stomach that because of you just got the new owner. He doesn't care about the money. And like we've been saying, you give up negative I was about to say negative assets. That's just a liability. You give up liabilities for them. Yeah, I'm man, I'm actually pretty excited to watch all. And then the Aiton piece of it is like you said with the asset thing is who knows if y'all bring him back. I'll make this point first and then ask you if you do want to bring him back. But I mean, we've talked about a bunch, and a lot of people have that like the ideal move is probably to trade him into two or three other role players. So is that still what you want to do, or would you be interested in having a look at the team with Frank Vogel and Aiton and Beal and all them?
Yeah, so my hope was that we could somehow, once this Beal whole thing saga started, which basically just started yesterday, just to mention, it really was a
Yeah.
very quick developing saga. My hope was that we could somehow include him in this deal and pry like a Gafford and a
Ooh, yeah.
maybe even like a Kyle Kuzma or a. I'm assuming Kuzma's a free agent, so it's a little bit complicated with that. But also like
Yeah.
Monty Morris is a good option for somebody to run the point for us, or Denny Avdia as well, who would be perfect for us at the three. I don't know how that's going to work. It'll also be interesting if that three-way with the Clippers ends up coming to fruition. If we could somehow snag somebody from there. I mean, I don't particularly love Batum, but like he would be a solid fit for us at the three. I mean, so it's interesting. But your point about Frank Vogel, from what his comments were in his opening press conference, which we might discuss a little bit more on Vogel and later this episode or in another podcast, but he's always talked about he likes to have a good, anchor in the middle at center. It's kind of tough. I wasn't really sure how to interpret those comments because he could either be talking about he wants Aiton to be that guy, or he's saying Aiton is not good enough. We're going to trade him for that guy. And then, of course, if that's the trade case, that opens up a lot of possibilities. I'm still firmly in the trade him camp. I think it's, especially now that we have those three guys, we can't afford to take a risk with that. I'd rather have proven contributors.
What one thing on that though is okay. Like I know this was 2 years ago, but he did a great job neutralizing Jokic, and there's a reason me and you've been high on him. I feel like people do, and maybe it's his fault, maybe it's Monty. Well, obviously it's both their faults. I don't know which one it's more their fault, but like imagine going to work and your main manager supervisor you just absolutely hate and y'all are not on speaking terms. I mean, you're not going to perform too well at the job, right? So like I I'm kind of leaning 60% run it back with Aiton, but at the same time, like I definitely get what you just said and like what a lot of people are saying about trying to get other stuff for him. Because like, I mean, we did just see the best player in the league won, and he was a center. And I mean, granted, he played Aiton off the floor this past playoffs, but I don't know. Maybe it'd be worth giving a try with Vogel. I mean, we could talk about Vogel. We could talk about him right now. What do you think about the Vogel hire? We never got to talk about it.
Yeah, so the vocal hire, I wasn't necessarily so. My main option was Nick Nurse, and
Yeah.
for reasons unknown, he went to the Sixers. I think partially there was also some apparently pretty bad PR about him. Basically, the Raptors team as a whole like hated him. I don't know where that came from or why it was kept kind of hush hush because I didn't even know about this until like it kind of surfaced during the search. So I would have still preferred Nurse. I got to be honest. After that,
One sec. Do you remember that whole thing with Nurse, like the year after the bubble, him and Siakam getting into it? You don't remember that?
yeah, actually, I do remember that Siakam incident now. But obviously, that's just like a one-player situation.
It is. Yeah, true.
That's just like a Monty and an Aiton situation, for example.
True.
But the rumor that the whole team, like Fred VanVleet, for example, is I think pretty clearly the leader of that team, apparently wasn't a fan of his either, which is kind of interesting. As a coach, though, I really liked his ability. But once Nurse was out of the discussion, and also Ty Lue, who I don't think was ever really in the discussion, I think we would have loved to have him. But the Clippers are not stupid; they're not going to trade, in my opinion, one of the 5 best coaches in the league to a division rival for second round picks and stuff. After that, especially when the finalists were announced, and it was Vogel, Doc Rivers, and Kevin Young, I was definitely on the Vogel train, and it ended up being the best case scenario because Vogel, his reputation is obviously defense, which I did like because obviously I think that's the weakness of our team. We have two, well now three ball dominant superstars, or not necessarily ball dominant, but superstars whose main prowess is at the offensive end. They're not bad defenders, but they're more offensive minded. You need somebody who has experience coaching a championship defense. Obviously, double title, whatever. Ha ha ha. I mean, I've done it myself, but they did win a championship. And besides that, he also had great defenses like in Indiana, where they probably would have gone to the N.B.A. finals if it weren't for a certain big three in Miami. So he has experience in building defenses. His struggles are at the offensive end. So far, he brought in Kevin Young, who was a finalist for the job, to be his main assistant. Obviously, he's more of an offensive minded guy, so I think that's very good for us. He brought in David Fizdale, who obviously, as a head coach, whatever. It's not ideal as a head coach, but as an assistant coach, he has a pretty good track record. I mean, he's been under Vogel before. He coached under Spoelstra before he got his first big job in Memphis, so I like that. So I don't know. It just depends on how the coaching staff was filled out for me. And getting Kevin Young back, I think, is just a win-win. And I think Kevin Young is probably going to get hired off next year, but it's one of those things. This is obviously this is a championship or bust year. I think it's pretty clear at this point. So I love the fact that we have Vogel to coach that defense, and hopefully he'll delegate more of the offense to Kevin Young. So Vogel alone, I was a 6 out of 10. With Kevin Young being added in, and technically Fizdale, although I'm not as excited with Fizdale, I give it an 8 out of 10 as well.
All pretty positive. Here's what I'm wondering. I don't exactly know how to figure this out right now. Is like, how much money exactly do y'all have after the trade? Like, can y'all even use the mid-level exception at this point?
What I was told is that yes, we could, but I don't know how. I've just seen it from people on Twitter saying, "Hey, let's go get Gabe Vincent for the MLE," which I don't think is going to happen. But let's go get Gabe Vincent for the MLE.
If y'all could, though, that'd be sweet.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have a discussion on possible players to sign on the MLE. But like a Gabe Vincent would be amazing, or a Naz Reid is more of what I'm thinking along the lines of. So I don't know if it's actually possible.
What about Christian Wood?
I think he's under contract, but
no, he's unrestricted.
Oh, is he? I mean, he's not great defensively.
No,
but
he isn't.
I don't know. I mean, I'd rather have Naz Reid, but we also obviously have the ability to sign minimum guys, which will, we can maybe get onto a few guys that might fit well with that, and some of them sound horrifying, but they actually sound like they might be solid fits.
Oubre?
Also, Oubre would be nice. I was thinking more upon the lines of guys I dislike. Dylan Brooks is the one that I've honestly been thinking.
It wouldn't be bad.
It's the antics. If the antics didn't exist, obviously I think he might still be in Memphis for that. But he is one of the best defenders in the N.B.A. regardless of what you think of him. And we need good defenders. And then another one is Pat Bev, which I really can't stomach. And I don't really think, obviously he's a good defender, but I don't think he's at that point anymore where he can impact games like he used to. Dennis Schroeder is one that I would really like. I think that would make a lot of sense. So there are a lot of names to go through. I think Dylan Brooks is honestly, we are the best fit for him. It's just a matter of, do they have interest and can they keep him in check? I think it's one of those things. We came to the Suns. Ideally, Booker and Durant would be like, "Hey, you got to stop doing this shit. Like, we're going to keep you in check." And they're veterans, whereas Memphis, I mean, you have Steven Adams, but like it's not quite the same. Steven Adams telling you what to do, whereas Kevin Durant, who's a multi-time champion and stuff like that, you know. Um, so that's really where the offseason is going to go is, well, obviously, if the MLE is available. If the MLE isn't available, I think the taxpayer MLE is for sure there, which is, I think, 5.5 million or 6 million. I don't remember the specific number. So that's also a possibility, but that would take you out of the Gabe. There's no way Gabe Vincent or Nas Reed are going to take 5.5 million a year. You know, I think
no.
the full MLE possibly. Like I said, I don't think Vincent will. I think Vincent's going to get 20 mil a year, but for somebody like Nas Reed or somebody like a Nikola Vucevic who might be trying to ring chase. I know it sounds disgusting, but for the MLE, I think it's a pretty solid
For the
deal if we
MLE,
trade Aiden. Yeah, so there's a whole world of possibilities. I'm sure it's going to be one of those things. It's going to be like the Nets. I mean, I really think that's the comparison with this roster is the Nets 2 years ago.
That is funny, isn't it?
I mean, I think it is. Obviously, KD's older, and then it's kind of like Booker is the Harden in this scenario, and Beal is the Kyrie. Beal's had some off the court antics back in the day too, but I think he's much less on that scale than Kyrie is, and I think Booker at this point is probably better than that version of Harden. I got to be honest.
Oh yeah, he definitely is.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
Yeah. But the same thing is they were running through the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round that year until the injuries happened. So I mean, that's the positive is they looked absolutely unbeatable. So
one more name that like they'll probably pick up his team option. It's only 10 million, but if they did him a favor and let him go, I would really like Alec Burks as an MLE guy. I mean, I know y'all just got Beal and you already have Booker, but having him off the bench, I would like that for cheap.
Yeah, I like Alec Burks for sure.
I guess to be on the more pessimistic side, we talked a little bit about Beal's injuries. KD has kind of had a similar track record the past or few years at this point. They both have just been like hovering around 40 to 60 games. So that's a bit concerning because we did see with the Nuggets, like, I mean, you don't have to be a first seed, but seeding matters. I think I saw, what was it, like 70% of first seeds ended up winning the finals. Like regular season still does matter. It doesn't completely, like if they're healthy in the playoffs, y'all will be all right. And KD did stay healthy in the playoffs. It was too much on him. So that it's an obvious concern, but it does have to be mentioned because we have been pretty glowing towards the trade. Is there any other offseason thoughts you have for y'all?
I mean, the Ayton thing is really the main thing. What do we decide to do there? And I think it'll all kind of spiral from there. When it comes to filling out the roster, it's just going to be somebody on the MLE or taxpayer MLE. Like we said, I don't know specifically what we can do yet. And then who we sign on the minimums. Like I said, I think we are easily the most appealing destination, unless I guess Denver, I would say. But I honestly think we might be a more appealing destination just for, I don't know, ring chasers. That's just a thought I have.
And people, the Nuggets are kind of just filled up right now. They have to just prioritize getting their guys back. So
yeah, for sure. So I think guys like a Dylan Brooks, for example, others like that's the thing that because Gabe Vincent has not won a title, even though it's hard to believe that because he's I just love Gabe Vincent. He's just a winner. For somebody like him, he may look at it and say, "This is the perfect fit for me. I can be the point guard on this team." And it would literally be an amazing fit. And he may just say, 1 year, I'll take the 9.5 or 10. I forgot how much the MLE is these days. And just go win a championship. I mean, that would be incredible. I just don't know how likely it is to happen. Maybe somebody like Brook Lopez, who's a free agent, looks at it and says, oh, this is easily, I mean, he would fit in easily with that team. He would be a perfect fit. So I think it's just going to be just a matter of what we do with Ayton, because I think if we keep Ayton, obviously we're going to look probably for a point guard with the MLE. If we trade Ayton, unless we get a solid center back in return, it's probably going to be on a Nas Reed or a Vucevic or Brook Lopez or something like that. That'll be our bigger signing, and then it's just going to be filling out the roster with whoever. I honestly think we mentioned Oubre a couple times. I do think it's a possibility. Honestly, I think culture-wise, I think he would fit in fine. So I think, and he can, he can play a wing role for us, which that's really what we need. I think we're mostly solid at guards. We just need a point guard there. And then wings is what we need. So I think Landale comes back. I think Biombo comes back. So it's just starting center if Aiton's not there. So there's interesting things. I don't want to go too in depth for fucking Ish Wainwright and people like that. But we're gonna bring some guys back. I think some might leave. So
Ish Wainwright should go on the Sixers.
Yeah, he fit in there.
He wouldn't fit in. Yeah, no, that I feel like we had too much Dylan Brooks talk, but that's the thing my mind keeps going to, and my two Michelob Ultras is like, if he's willing to take that pay cut, then you gotta think he's willing to cut the shit a little bit, because he would probably meet with Katie and Booker. And even if he doesn't, it might just be worth it. Just cheap, really good defender. But anyway, all right. Well, the people who just won the title, we gotta at least give them a little time. They went 16-4. I looked it up. It was that's the second best record of a playoff team since 2003, when they started doing 7-game series in the first round. The first was obviously the Warriors in 16-17. They're 16-1. Then the Spurs, when they won the title in 2006, went 16-4 as well. So that's pretty impressive. They only lost on the road once. Jokic averaged a cool 30, 13, and 10. And I know everyone at this point has seen he's the first player ever to lead the playoffs in all three of those categories. And I don't know if you saw this, but Jokic had the highest PER in playoff history from an individual player. Think of what you will with that. I kind of did want to go through their road very briefly to the finals. I mean, we could kind of skip the T-Wolves series, because it was just I don't think me or you watched much of that. It was just a foregone conclusion. The Timberwolves are just a sad team, but Ant was obviously awesome. That we could start. I mean, we were just talking about the Suns, man. That series was it was something else. What was that, game 3, when they were just going absolutely bananas at each other? Booker and KD versus Jokic. What? No,
Yeah, I mean, game 3.
It was what was it, game 4? Because it was the one, yeah, game 4. That was one of the craziest games I've ever seen, man. That is partly what we just talked about your Suns so much, but why I'm really high on you. Because me and everyone else, even though I picked the Nuggets before the year, the Kevin Durant Booker thing spooked all of us. It made us lose faith in Denver for a second. Game 4 is really why we felt that way. But the fact that Jokic was straight up battling with those two like that. I mean, Jamal Murray had 28. He was no slouch in this game either. I guess, what was your biggest takeaway from the Nuggets Sun series? Is it just, I guess it's just y'all didn't have depth, and KD and Booker were amazing, but Jokic was even more amazing? Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what Denver was. You could tell Denver was a team that was put together. They had played together all year. I mean, some of the pieces obviously longer than this year, but Bruce Brown, the main one that came in this year, and Christian Brown as well. They were a team, and the Suns were kind of a team that looked like they were held together by duct tape in a lot of ways. I mean, Devin Booker played outstanding. Kevin Durant did not have his best series, but he was still, good. And then it was, pray we get something from someone else. Ayton he had 2 good games in Phoenix. The rest of the series was a bit questionable. Cameron Payne had some solid games, but he was coming off an injury. He was also kind of questionable. Chris Paul, I thought, was good in the first 2 games, and then he got hurt. So
of course,
it was a lot of depth. But I mean, the one thing you could take heart in is that we took them further than anybody else. I mean, yep. And I mean, we were, once again, a roster that was put together 2 months before the playoffs, essentially. So, yeah, it's it's one of those things. The Nuggets, like I said, they were very good. I think a lot of people, including myself, got too caught up in the whole Jokic can't defend bullshit myth and that kind of stuff, and didn't realize how good, um, how much he's improved on that end, how much Michael Porter Jr. has also improved on that end, and then also how good Aaron Gordon is. I mean, the front court is just insane. I'm not a huge fan of Michael Porter Jr., but Aaron Gordon is freaking incredible. People don't realize how underrated he is. And then Jokic is still underrated, regardless of. Hopefully, people will start realizing and giving him more respect, because I mean, it's just ridiculous some of the narratives that were coming out during this playoff run when he was literally dominating teams, like he's been doing for a while.
Yeah, and the reason you might have said the thing about Porter is because I was hate texting him so much. And the thing was, like, he was just on defense, like the IQ just wasn't there for some games for some reason. I don't know what it was, if he was just fed up with like having bad games. But no, you're right. Like a lot of the games he did look good on defense. That I can't deny. It's just it's frustrating because you want to see that all the time from him. He's got all the tools to do so, but like it was really nice to see from Porter throughout the whole of the run, finding other ways to impact the game for sure. Whether that be through mucking it up on defense with his size, getting boards. He looks goofy as hell when he takes it into the paint, but he's so big that he could just like pass out of a bad drive. You mentioned Aaron Gordon, you know that's my boy. I mean, he had some really big games. Obviously, he had some offensive duds like throughout the playoffs. That's just the Aaron Gordon experience. People are gonna make him shoot because you got to exploit any kind of weakness you can against them. I mean, and we're about to talk about the Lakers series a bit. He got played off the floor in that one, but I mean, I just got to give major credit to Aaron Gordon for especially the defense, man. Like it's crazy how good he was on defense, and he has been for a while. But just seeing it in like a playoff run after it's all complete, like just switching on to anyone, giving everyone trouble from either the perimeter or the paint. I just love his game. Lakers. That was a competitive sweep. What do you think about the Lakers series?
Yeah, it was one of those things. I honestly thought it was going to be a better series. I thought it was going to be going 6 games. I just figured the main issue in that series was Anthony Davis just never really got going on the offensive end, and the
Yeah.
Lakers, if he's not contributing enough on the offensive end, they're in trouble. I think the Lakers, in a lot of ways, the first series and the second series, a lot of their reliance was on Rui having really good series. Austin Reeves was playing really well, like especially scoring wise, and I felt that kind of dried up a little bit once you got to that Denver series and somewhat in the Golden State series as well. And at that point, they just couldn't put up the points to keep up with Denver. I didn't think their defensive game plan was awful. I thought they were one of the more better equipped teams to deal with it, with the Denver offense. But at the same time, I mean, they just never could figure out, like every other team in the playoffs, the Jokic Murray pick and roll. I mean, or pick and pop or whatever. It was just incredible to watch that combination the entire playoffs. And that was pretty much it. Like you said, it was a competitive 4 game sweep, but they were just clearly second best in a few areas. Really every area, I got to be honest. The
And
LeBron game,
D'Angelo Russell showed his true colors too, by the way, eventually in
yeah,
this series.
yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason for D'Angelo, but he did not have a good playoffs at all. I got to be honest. He had moments or two in that Memphis series, but it was not a very good postseason for him. So it'll be interesting to see what I'd be surprised if Lakers bring him back, but it was just the Lakers had depth. It clearly showed that the Nuggets had the better depth. I mean, guys like Bruce Brown were clearly better than some of the guys that are coming off their bench. And then again with the stars, I mean, Jokic outplayed Anthony Davis that series quite easily. And whenever that happens, the Lakers are in trouble.
I I mean, some of the shots Jokic was making over AD was just absurd, dude. Like those just one-legged fall away threes. Uh, I obviously we shouldn't spend like too much time on the Lakers. I do kind of like want to talk about them on a pod soon because like I was just honestly downright impressed with them this playoffs, especially after how their year started. Like it's the Celtics just had a big comeback story last year, but this is to me like my favorite comeback story of the season just because how much I like watching the Lakers. And the reason I say that as it pertains to this series is just like these games, even when they were getting crazy out of hand for the Lakers, like there was some 20-point leads here and there. And I know this is like part of just because they had LeBron, but I was just like so impressed at their composure that they just never felt like they were out of the game. Like, did you see that with them, or am I putting too much into that?
I would agree. I would agree with that statement for sure. I it's tough to say because I mean it's just tough because the Nuggets, like I said, to me all year I felt like they were disrespected and such.
Oh yeah.
But people didn't realize how good of a team they are. I mean, they are a complete unit, and I think it took them finally beating the Lakers. Well, first of all, beating the Suns because I mean the Suns had the star power, and then the Lakers also have that star power and were a more complete team, I would say, than the Suns. Still got to be honest. And I mean,
Yeah, just
they handled
completeness. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean they handled both series. That's the thing. The Suns series obviously went to 6 games, but there really wasn't. Even after the Suns won Game 4 and tied the series up at 2, I was still like, I was kind of like, I still don't see how the Suns win this because you know it's just especially at home. I think that's another aspect when you talk about is
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember their losses
They
honestly.
only have one road loss in the playoffs. Or no, one
Interesting.
home
On
loss. I
home,
mean,
which was the
that's
Heat
what
in
I meant.
Game 2.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Yep.
Okay, yeah, because I'm trying to because there's 2 losses to Phoenix were are on the road, and then that loss to Minnesota was Game 4, I think. I think it was Game 4, yeah.
Hmm.
So one loss at home, and I mean it was a perfectly it was a great shooting night, I think, for the Heat, if I'm remembering correctly.
And it was
That
just
was the
one of
main
those
thing.
games for the Nuggets. I guess that transitions us into the Heat series, by the way. Is like they had a game like this against y'all. It might have been game two, but I think they survived it where they just like kind of forgot who they were for a little bit. That was kind of how that Heat game was.
Yeah, and that the Suns game, Game 2. I
Yeah.
thought the Suns that was their best defensive game of the series, even better than Game 3 and 4. And the Nuggets just ended up hitting shots down the stretch. What happened in that game was Jamal Murray played absolutely awful for 3 quarters and then got hot in the fourth quarter.
True.
And yeah, so that was an excellent win for them. It's one of those things. It's not obviously the most famous quote in the world, but it's good to win when you play shit. And that game too was a good example of that. I'm not even going to say they played shit. They didn't play. They didn't play to their standard, and they still ended up winning. And once that happened, I knew that was an opportunity blown for the Suns. And you know, it was one of those things after Game 1 of that Heat series, I was kind of like, this might be a gentleman's sweep,
Yeah.
if not a sweep in general. The Heat won Game 2, and I tried to convince myself. I was like, you know, this could. They're going back to Miami. It could be like the Bucks series, for example. We go back to Miami, take both, and then it's 3-1, and then you just got to steal one. After Game 3, it just felt like a balloon had been popped. Like all the momentum was gone. And Game 4, like just went by like that, and then before you know it, you're down 3-1, and there was no way you were going to win 3 in a row. 2 of them being in Denver. So
See, I didn't feel that way. I still felt good about the Nuggets in five. Like I still felt there was no hope at all for the Heat to win another game just because it was the Nuggets really played bad by their standards on both ends. And the fact that they were still about to come back, what was it, a 3-point game? I just felt like that I don't know. The Nuggets just got the game two jitters, I guess, because I was just thinking about the Sun series when I was watching. I'm like, that was their one bad game. It's just not gonna happen again. But I mean, to the Heat's credit, and we didn't talk about them much because we're talking about the Nuggets, but I mean that's your second team. Nuggets are my second team, so we duked it in the finals. Our B teams. Um, they still kept it competitive the whole time. It's like the Lakers. It's like, yeah, that team was really good. It's just the Nuggets, they were just too big, too strong, and they have a guy who averages a triple double at the center position, so that they're gonna be around. And something else we have to mention is like Like, dude, Jamal Murray is so good. He averaged 10 assists in the finals. His scoring is always huge. I mean, it started with that bubble run. And I don't know if you noticed, just like there was just those times when the Nuggets were doing that thing where they kind of forgot who they were a little bit. Or like Jokic would be in foul trouble, and then Murray was just like, I'm just gonna ice this like complete swish, this pull up mid range to shut the crowd up and calm everything down. It seemed like he would like it's like everyone keeps saying how Jokic is their cheat code, and he is, but that's like a given. But Murray definitely is their just their calmer. It's just like everyone, I'll make a
Yeah,
big time shot.
I think it's a good point because what I noticed from the Nuggets in the previous seasons where they got eliminated was Jokic at times. That is the one difference he may have from being like, which I'm not trying to say he's not a superstar. What I'm saying is some other superstars are more ball dominant, and he tries to get others involved.
Right.
The difference is that he has Jamal Murray, who's an incredible scorer, instead of Austin Rivers and Campazzo. That's the main difference, you know. And when he wants to get his team involved, if it doesn't go right, and you know, sometimes Jokic will give the ball up and they can't get the ball in the post to him again, just because they're playing deny, obviously, on him. Murray can come demand the ball in the perimeter, and like you said, just pull up, hit some big shots, and that was something that nobody else on that team could do before he
And
came
even
back.
getting someone like Porter involved too when he like was sulking had it because obviously Jokic is like doing this all the time, but like I said, like Murray averaged 10 assists, like there because obviously you need to switch it up. That's why it's called the two-man game between them. And you could tell sometimes Murray would just like look around and go like, all right, who's pissed, who's not doing good, I'm gonna make sure they get involved. Like I guess like the difference is like Jokic is always just looking for the best play, and like it's not like he never does what I just said, but it just felt like Murray was just like looking for the right people to pass to in that regard.
Mhm.
Did you watch any of their like championship parade stuff?
I saw some highlights. I saw Michael Malone was hammered.
Yeah.
Um, some guy was saying that he was the Lakers' daddy, which I thought was a little bit cringe. Not for not obviously it was just some random dude. I just wasn't sure who he was. I was glad it looked like Jokic enjoyed it. There were some real weirdos on Twitter, which isn't a surprise, but saying they were trying to start an agenda against Jokic because he's
Of
basically
course.
saying he just wants to go back home and like spend time with his family. I was like, bro, just leave that man
Yeah,
alone.
like
Yeah,
everyone's different. Like if he doesn't care as much, whatever, he did it.
yeah,
I
I was
mean,
like one of those things that it doesn't make any sense. People just always have agendas against Jokic, and
yeah,
it's
it's crazy. It feels like me and you have been texting about that for the past few months. It's just like we always find random headlines of Jokic hate. It's so weird.
yeah,
Um,
but it's not. Yeah, it is what it is. He obviously he can do a Clay Thompson, hold up his ring now, and tell him to leave him alone. So
um, well, yeah, it was a great run. I'm glad my pick was correct, so that I gained nothing out of it but satisfaction. Any anything else from this Nuggets run you want to talk about?
no, I mean, I think like you said though, they're not going to go anywhere at all. I mean, I don't know what the status of all their contracts because I think Bruce Brown is like a player option, so he
He
theoretically
does.
could. But as far as I know, everybody else is under. I mean, Christian Brown obviously is a rookie. He's only going to get better and stuff like that, and they
Mm-hmm.
could probably build out their roster because, like I said, I think the Suns are probably the prominent ring chasing team this offseason for veterans, but
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be veterans that want to go play for the Nuggets too. So I think they can continue to improve and get maybe I don't even know what their next probably a better backup point guard, somebody who can actually play playoff minutes because you know Reggie didn't end up doing much for them or actual backup center or something like that. So their scary thing is there are ways they can improve too. So
You mentioned the veteran thing, and it did remind me of something. It's just like a small stupid thing, but it I do like how like I guess it's something to look out for with this next free agency because I feel like on the pods we've kind of learned free agency stuff as we've gone. But like me and you hammered them for the DeAndre Jordan piece of it last year, signing him. But for one thing, if you're like a backup center on the Nuggets, you're pretty much not going to play because Aaron Gordon's a really good option there, anyways. Second thing is like I feel like our culture of like looking at stats and looking online all the time makes us forget about just like culture veteran pieces. And it seemed like he was super beloved on the team. And like you could see in the championship parade, like him, Jeff Green, and KCP revolved around each other. It reminded me of like on the Cavs, like how they had Richard Jefferson and Channing Frye. Like you just need that like group of like dudes who are over themselves and really good influences. And I mean, DeAndre Jordan came out in that last finals game, and I mean, it's not like he did anything substantial, but it's like they were all in big foul trouble, and he came out and he knew what to do. So, I don't know, maybe just something to look out for this free agency. Maybe look more at the person than the stats and like how they played. Okay, so I guess we're going my team, which is always I think I always say it like that. We're going to my team. Just just say a few sentences of something while I finish chugging this beer, and then we could talk about the Hornets.
Well, the lottery was good, mostly good. Obviously, it wasn't perfect, but the lottery was pretty good, and it sets you up in a great position to draft a difference maker. The question is, will they draft a difference maker?
That you need to quit your job. You need to go work at ESPN or something. I like that interlude. All right, the Michelobes are down. This is two Michelobes. This is my grand scheme for them to both be finished by the time we got here. I'm not gonna like go into like super detail about stuff. I have like some notes. We go into some of it, but obviously the biggest thing is the second pick, and I've been saying since before the season we needed a tank. We needed a tank. This is the draft to tank, and part of the reason I knew we were getting Wimby. I knew that. We're too cursed for that. That's why I was really just hoping for the second pick because I've been a Scoot guy since he joined the G League, and we got it. And obviously, as you know, it's been a raging debate. Part of it is because people on Reddit and Twitter need something to talk about. Part of it is we're not really revealing much. And part of it is people have Miller slated us because of a fit thing, because it's like the LaMelo Scoot point guard thing, and we'll unpack all of that. I'm just like I said, I'm big pro Scoot. You know that. I'm like super on Scoot. I think a lot of Hornets fans are. Miller, like I definitely get it, and I wouldn't be like I would be kind of devastated if we didn't get Scoot, but I feel like Miller, you kind of have to talk yourself into it if we do get him, because you know he's like 6'9", and we could talk about him in a little bit. I guess one thing was like when I was at the gym earlier, I kind of had this thought, but I want to see what you thought about it. But like a big thing with the Scoot versus Miller thing is like how we already have a point guard. You can't draft Scoot, this and that. Which, by the way, I think me and you think that Scoot would be a really good fit with LaMelo, and we could get into that on another podcast. But if we do take him, I think it's funny. Do you remember last year, like how the Kings had the fourth pick, and they had just gotten out of the situation of having too many guards, but everyone was giving the Kings shit because they weren't drafting Jaden Ivey. They're like, oh, Kings moment, Kings moment. Why'd they draft Keegan? You can't draft for fit. Who cares if they needed a wing and not a guard? This guy's a star. And I like hear the same people say the opposite for the Scoot thing, where it's just like, well, no, you have to draft for fit. Scoot wouldn't reach his potential with the Hornets, this and that. What's going on with that? Can you explain that to me? Like, why was it with Ivy? It was cool if the Kings drafted Ivy, but now we can't draft Scoot. I don't get. And LaMelo's is more facilitating than De'Aaron Fox. Like, please explain this to me.
I don't know. I think part of it is I think a lot of people have questions about LaMelo, whereas De'Aaron Fox is more of a I don't want to say low maintenance and stuff, but it kind of is. LaMelo's even as crazy as it is, which how good De'Aaron Fox was here. LaMelo's still probably the bigger name. Um, I think people just assume. I think it's just uninformed people, because you literally look at the situation that Charlotte has had for the last 2 or is it 3 years. They've been playing LaMelo next to another point guard and Terry Rozier. Like it's literally not
Exactly.
gonna it's not going to be much of a
Exactly.
difference. I mean, I think the only question they have is like that's the question with Scoot Henderson is his shot, his jump shot, which I'm not too concerned about because he's freaking 19 years old. Like he has plenty of time to develop that. People don't realize LaMelo is not a bad shooter. It's not like you're going
He's
to
a
be
great
playing.
shooter.
It's not like you're going to be playing freaking Westbrook next to Draymond Green or something. It's not going to be like that at all. These are guys. I'm not saying they're Stephen Curry or Klay Thompson or whatever, but these are serviceable NBA shooters at least. And LaMelo is above average, I would say. And then
Yes.
you have other players on the team like PJ, who's a known floor spacer. Gordon Hayward may be crap, but he spaces the floor. I mean, so I just don't get it. For me, and it's not a shot at Brandon Miller, because I really do like him,
Yeah.
and I think he's going to be a very good player,
Yeah.
honestly. But I think the ceiling of Scoot Henderson is like a Derrick Rose style player, and I think the potential is too high. I think you have to pick him. I think Brandon Miller's potential is high too, but I don't see it being as high as Scoot Henderson. I think Scoot has a higher bust potential. I will say that. I do think Scoot has a higher bust potential, but I think it's a no brainer for me. I think there's also just a concern because the Hornets may not have they just haven't had those homegrown wing players necessarily. I mean, you can count PJ, I guess, or
And
Bridges.
Bridges, we've had
Yeah, I
them.
mean, yeah, but they're not
They're
the
not
three and
pure
D,
small forward 3 and D,
the
right?
pure 3 and D guy. Because I really like PJ, and I think he is. But that's the idea is PJ next to Brandon Miller. I do think would be a really cool
It
fit.
would. And I get the argument. I definitely get the argument for it. Don't get me wrong. I do. It's just I think if you're in our position and we need stars, we need stars. Stars. Everyone is like, yo, draft. You don't draft for fit. Best player available. Go get a star if you're a small market team. Until it's us, and then everyone's trying to create the narrative that we shouldn't have. And I feel like you touched on something with the LaMelo and Fox thing, where it's more of like a ego and like popularity zeitgeist than like actual playing. Because I like that point you made where it's like people didn't factor Fox as much into as LaMelo. Even though, by the way, LaMelo's like a willing passer, always getting the ball out of his hands, moves off the ball, great shooter, etc. Um, but one thing about Scoot and like Westbrook as a comparison, and like I feel like Hornets fans are gonna be scared to say that because of the like reputation of Westbrook and his later career. But I mean, dude, if we could get someone on the level of Westbrook, like say if like Scoot's shot never develops, which me and you think it will because his shot looks pretty good. I mean, having a Westbrook type talent, he was always in the playoffs. We're never in the playoffs. Never. Never. We
Yeah.
need a star. And you know something that like made me make noises in my house or look at sometimes you look at an NBA headline, you're like, oh, type of shit. Brandon Miller, do you want to guess what his at rim finishing was in college?
No, honestly, I am not sure.
Just give me one guess.
55%.
39%.
Ooh. Ooh.
39%. And I people like talk about like, oh yeah, well he's a good fit, he's a good shooter, this and that. Well, here's my thing: if LaMelo, like we established, he's a great shooter himself and good off catch and shoots. It wouldn't have fit. Would we want a rim pressure guy to go with LaMelo? Because listen to us, we were fourth in attempts at shots at the rim this year, which is like a big step up under Steve Clifford, obviously. But we were 24th in percentage there. LaMelo isn't that guy. That's why, like, I know he's like a point guard in the passing sense, but on the offense, he's more of a wing. Uh, like if we're talking about shot attempt, shot making, he's more of a wing, especially with his size, because he ain't like he can get to the basket and do some stuff, but his finishing isn't great. He's very weak getting there, and that's another thing with Scoot. He's ripped, dude. He's ripped. We need big guys. We got too many lanky guys. We just got rid of Jalen McDaniels. He was a toothpick. Miller's a skinny guy, man. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a good point. I do think I mean, he can't be as skinny as McDaniel's. It's just it's also a question. It's because I think it's one of those things for the Hornets. I don't think you need to draft necessarily for fit. I think it's best player available. I think that because I don't think there's anybody on that team that prevents somebody else from being drafted, even LaMelo. And
Yeah.
like I said, even that being said, I still think they're a solid fit together. You can't be drafting Miller because you're not sure about the Bridges situation, and that. It's like, screw that. I mean, it's all about, for me, best player available in every draft, unless you have a pure superstar on your team. And at the moment, even though I really like LaMelo, he's not reached that superstar tier yet. So you just pick the best player available and you see if it works. And then also, other part I haven't discussed. I mean, Brandon Miller's got off the court concerns.
Exactly.
Um,
Yes, thank you.
the whole
Please
the
go
whole,
on.
the whole situation, which I'm not going to go too in depth on, because I think everybody knows about it at this point. But there is serious stuff going on there. It's not a good look for somebody in the draft process to have baggage already. Going to a team that has multiple players with baggage already. Scoot Henderson, to my knowledge at least, has no baggage to this point. I think that's another piece into it.
What's the opposite of baggage? He's got no baggage.
He's
He's got great baggage.
just a hooper. That's what he
He's a
is. How about
hooper.
that? Yeah. So I think that adds up to it too. The hope is that this is all just being overblown because the Hornets apparently had them both in for workouts. So hopefully they've looked in person. They've come to their senses. Eh, It'll just be interesting. Obviously, the whole Jordan deal as well.
Ooh.
Although apparently he will still be in control of the team
He
until
will.
like July. So
Uh,
that being said, it may actually be a benefit for you because if I'm guessing Michael Jordan would rather have Scoot than Brandon Miller, but I have a feeling it's going to be Kupchak making that call, and I don't know how to feel about that.
did you see Kupchak fell on stage a few? Oh shit, that was Joe. Anyway, yeah, you mentioned that report of them being in the workout. The reports were that Scoot performed better in the workout, obviously, because I mean, look at him; he looks like a freaking Greek demigod. But yeah, you're right. Scoot seems more like a Jordan player. That's why it feels so weird that we're gonna mess this up. I saw a quote from J. Kyle Mann on the Ringer. I'm a big fan of like his work. He had the best quote. He just said this because we've been in all these trade rumors. I don't even want to get into all those because it's kind of like week old news, and I just don't agree with any of them. But yeah. So J. Kyle Mann, he put it best. He just said, "Don't fuck around, Charlotte. Don't fuck around. Just take Scoot. Just take Scoot." Yeah, you mentioned how Jordan sold the team. I'm super excited about that. But the new dudes coming in they kind of look like some goobers, not gonna lie. But they definitely do have like massive incentive to set the ship straight and get like real staff in the building that isn't like Jordan's brother, and hopefully they're a little more forward thinking with it. But I don't know if you saw one of them was like involved with Jordan and the whole GameStop stock scandal. So that's fun. That's some
What?
Hornet stuff. What else? Yeah. I have it here on my notes. I hope we trade Terry and Hayward, but I don't know if it'll happen. Like I know like if we draft Scoots, like, well, yeah, you got to trade Terry, but it's the Hornets, so you never know. They might go like, oh, Scoot could come off the bench, and then that's where I see the concern where people are just like, because that's I feel like people just don't want us to draft Scoot because we're the Hornets, so they're just like, nah, get him off there. We don't need him on there. Um, but and then one more thing, Miles Bridges tweeted back soon. Um, it's definitely gonna be weird. It is funny because we had to rename our podcast because of him and what he did, and obviously we really don't endorse that. Not just obviously beating your significant other, but even just like beating anyone. I don't think
Yeah.
anyone should be getting beat on. I saw some stuff on Reddit. I'm not gonna like hard report this because I didn't look into any of it because I don't even know how I go about doing that. Maybe like just scrolling through Instagram and Twitter. I don't got time for that. But people were saying that him and the girl like have kind of been making some reconciliation, and it seems to be better. This and that. I always just thought of it like we're just gonna have to get into the season and see what the mood's like. What do you think? Like, isn't it just a time thing? Like, we'll see how we feel about it. It's gonna be weird.
Yeah, from a basketball sense, I mean, he's obviously a good player.
He's
He's
a
for
great
somebody
player.
that Charlotte missed last year greatly. We were talking about pressure on the rim. He is probably the only guy on that team that actually does that.
Oh yeah.
It would be nice to have him go scoot and such. And the main question will just be how much work has he done over the past year? Because it could be a situation where that's all he's had to do over the last year, where he's been spending is just hoop by himself or whatever, or he could be off getting fat or something, and then you never know. But I mean, he gives you an above average defender, primary scorer, you could say. So
Mm-hmm.
from a basketball sense, I mean, I think it's a no brainer. Obviously, it's just all off the court stuff. There's no hope of trading him. I would say I don't think any. I mean, I don't think any team. That's what I say. But I'm sure there's some fools out there who would. Um, I just don't think it's a possibility you'll trade him. So I think you just have to roll with it, and then oh, and then I just hope for that girl's sake that she gets away too. I get the reconciliation stuff, but that stuff usually doesn't work out in the end. I just got to be honest.
Yeah.
So
And one thing I'll say about her, like, I really don't want to make this seem like I'm like turning it on people or trying to justify stuff. But that is the Hornets. You have to like justify stuff, and obviously, I'm not justifying what he did at all. But she seems kind of crazy too. Like she don't seem like an innocent angel herself. Obviously, she was the one who got beat up. So take that however you want. But she
yeah,
don't seem to got. And then the actual like report of it happening, again, not invalidating it, but it came from specifically her perspective, her like post and her speaking to the children, like I don't want to say coerce. This is I see I'm trying not to sound bad about it, but it's just like she's the one directing the camera and has the little kids. I know from experience, like a mom could get little kids to say shit that is in their favor. Again, not endorsing any of it, but like you said, from a basketball perspective, it would be an incredible boon to just like have the 1 year where we got hopefully Scoot and just bring Miles back for super cheap. Like I said, basketball talent wise, getting him for cheap, like we could actually. I never want to say this with the Hornets. I did like with the first year we had LaMelo's feeling good, but like Scoot, LaMelo, Miles, PJ, Mark Williams. I feel that's a pretty good team, right? I mean, that's pretty good. That's better than what some of the East had going on in the bottom this year.
yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely a back in contention for that play-in spot. I mean, because you forget about all the injuries, all the injuries this year too. I mean,
Yes, you're
I
right.
mean Terry Rozier is still around too. I think what's most likely is Terry will probably still be the starter unless you trade him. Terry will probably still be the starter, at least for the first half of the season. And if Scoot is incredible, then great. But I mean, I think it could be very similar to like a Benedict Mathurin, Buddy Hield kind of situation. He may just thrive in that six-man role. And then
Just
hopefully,
1 year off the
my hope,
bench, yeah.
yeah, and my hope is just like with the Pacers, after a year, Mathurin's going to take over this year and such. But Obviously, I think everybody kind of knew going into the season without Bridges they were going to struggle.
Yeah.
You still have Hayward too.
That he's like a puzzle piece you lost somewhere like years ago and you just don't want to find it because no one builds puzzles anymore unless you're like a woman in her 40s. Um, yeah, Hayward. No Hornets fans have even thought of him as part of the equation, but like Hayward off the bench ain't bad, honestly.
Yeah,
That's pretty
off the
good.
bench, it could be a lot worse. I mean, basically, what you're just going to probably do is Bridges will come in for Oubre, move into the starting lineup, Hayward to the bench, and I mean that's a positive for Charlotte. I mean, and then having Scoot hopefully off the bench or
Scooting
starting
Hayward off the bench. That's pretty
will be
good.
nice with Nick Richards, and
Yeah,
then
Big Nick.
whatever
I'm
whatever
gonna miss
else.
the one like conflicting thing with Scoot that like ultimately doesn't matter. It's just a fan thing. Is like he would just pretty much replace everything Dennis Smith did for us. But man, I really liked having that guy on the Hornets. Like I just big fan of Dennis Smith. I hope he ends up in the right spot. If he doesn't stay with
Yeah,
us.
it'll be interesting. I still think it's possible because I mean he could be the fourth guard. It would just mean less minutes
Yeah,
for him.
that's
But I mean
true.
there
I mean,
still is.
especially with how much LaMelo gets injured and stuff.
Yeah, and then if there's a possibility that I think it may be a possibility that Terry does get traded, he could be right there, be the backup
Yeah,
guard. So
yeah, that's true. Uh, well, all right. I don't got anything else. Well, that was said. Besides the Nuggets interlude in the middle, we just committed basketball therapy for each of our teams. Oh man, but it was fun. It's good to be back on the mic, dude. Any closing thoughts here? I'm excited for draft. Real excited for draft.
yeah, draft will be fun to see, and then July it's going to start kicking off. It's
Oh
it's
yeah,
it's going to be weird to be back in the whole veteran minimum situation, but there are
yeah.
some intriguing options, and then we'll just have to see. Let's see if any other big trades, because I think the Heat are definitely next up. See if there's a domino that falls there for they can swing a trade for a superstar.
Shoot, now I want to ask one more question as you brought that up. How'd you feel about Beal to Miami if that were to materialize? Did you like that?
I liked it, especially considering the trade that was proposed, which was apparently Duncan Robinson, Kyle Lowry, and some first round picks. I
Oh
thought
yeah,
that
that
was
would have been
I think
fantastic.
that's a no brainer. The thing that was proposed was losing Hero, which I was less on board
Yeah,
with. But
see,
I
that
mean,
was my thing. That's what I was thinking. I was like, if you gotta give up Hero, I might just rather have Hero, right?
yeah, I mean the only concern is what would you do at point guard, which honestly is a good question. I mean, I think that they should have bird rights on Vincent. So I think the hope would be that if they got Beal, Vincent would definitely want to come back because that is a legitimate. I mean, obviously they made the finals. It's a championship contender, but it's even more of a contender then. I think it would be a good fit too. I mean, I do honestly because I think he can provide exactly what Struess and Duncan Robinson or whoever else provide in that lineup easily, and then so much more. So I think it'd be a no-brainer. But for Miami, I think for now, for them, I think you want to take a swing at a forward of some sort, somebody who can play the four. I think that makes more sense for them at the moment, and then try and bring back Vincent if you can.
Yeah. Yeah, we get more into Miami and all these other teams. We're back, baby. But word, it was fun, man. Thanks a lot.